Welcome to the Executive Innovation Show podcast, where we bring you real executive conversations with industry game changers and thought leaders. We ask the questions you're thinking, what you're scared to ask, and we make your brain hurt afterward. With your host, Carrie Chitsey Wells, co-founder and CEO of One Touch Video Chat, live video interviews, and the nonprofit Humans Helping Humans.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. We're going to be talking about establishing hope in child poverty right here in the U.S., and I'm so happy to have with me my guest for the show today, Shelley Callahan. She's the Director of Development with Child Incorporated. She's also the writer of the On the Road series, which really highlights her work from around the world, and also author of the book, The House of Life. Shelley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, great. I want to really talk about Child Incorporated and how you guys partner with schools, orphanages, foster homes, childcare centers, really around the globe to help children with basic needs. And you're doing a lot of work here in the U.S. as well. Tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing specifically here in the U.S.
Absolutely. Yeah. Children Incorporated in the U.S. works in 8 states. We're in West Virginia, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Michigan, Louisiana, Arizona, and New Mexico. And we consider to have different divisions. So an inner city division, which includes Detroit, New Orleans, and Richmond, Virginia, where our office is based. And then we also have an American Indian division where we're supporting children on Indian reservations in Arizona and New Mexico. And then lastly, we have our Appalachian Region division, which includes supporting those children in basic needs in really the area of the United States that is absolutely like the poorest counties that we work with that are in those areas of mostly Eastern Kentucky and into West Virginia and North Carolina.
That's awesome. And so in those areas, tell everybody, what it means helping them with their basic needs. I think a lot of us, sometimes think that our needs are, a little beyond basic. So, really talk about what you guys are doing, for these kids and what you're providing.
Yeah. For children in the United States, it's a little bit different than it is for a lot of the children that we work with globally.
Right.
And that's because, like you just said, it is kind of, we understand that there's, of course, like poverty here in the United States, but what does that, really mean for a child and their family and really a community as a whole. So, here we're very lucky to live in a country where children are able to go to public schools, so, at the very minimum, they are, being provided with an education. But beyond that, when families are having to make difficult decisions on a regular basis because there's just not enough money for them, when they're working, they're either, unemployed or underemployed, and, trying to get by, trying to support their families. They're really just, having a lot of difficult decisions to make. So Children Incorporated really steps in and is able to provide that child with things such as we do a lot of backpack feeding. So we make sure that children are having food to take home on the weekends. If you can really imagine, often, they go home, and if they're not eating their, government subsidized meal at school, they might not be eating at home. We're making sure that they have school supplies on a regular basis. We're making sure that they have clothes and shoes. We found that with a lot of our U.S. projects, especially those that are located in areas where the temperature gets very cold in the winter, the children aren't going to school and when they don't have a coat or they don't have shoes, or they're showing up to school in flip-flops in like 0-degree weather. So we're really just making sure that those particular needs of individual children are being met so that they, they're able to go to school. They don't get get frustrated. They don't start staying home. And really those barriers of, poverty, we're able to, come in and help them with that.
Yeah, that's really great. And, also too, in this day and age, they don't get, made fun of, mental health, that kind of stuff too, I think is, a lot of times, overlooked from that perspective as well. Just, self-worth, right?
We talk about that so much. We absolutely feel that there is just as much of an importance of being able to show a child that, someone cares about them, that they're, concerned about their well-being. So that emotional, that psychological support. We have so many testimonials from children in our program that talk about how they didn't feel like they fit in. They were too embarrassed to go to school.
Right.
And then they didn't want to, participate. They
call attention to themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. One of the things I thought, that was really awesome is really how much you guys, really put emphasis and rely on your volunteer coordinators that are actually out there in the field, and that these are really kind of caring individuals that are really going above and beyond for these kids in their local community. Tell us a little bit about, what these volunteers and really how important not only they are to you guys, but to the kids that you're supporting.
Yeah, we absolutely couldn't do what we do as an organization without our volunteer coordinators. And they are, very often guidance counselors, directors of resource centers within these schools, teachers, sometimes principals. And, as you mentioned, they're completely offering their services on a volunteer basis. We're able to keep our overhead low as an organization so that we can provide the most the most amount of funds donated directly to the children, because these individuals are willing to do this just because they're seeing such a need within their, community, within the school that they work with, and, they see these children every single day. So, they're the ones that notice, yes, when they come to school and they have, holes in their shoes, or they don't have a coat on, or they're falling asleep because they haven't eaten, and so it's really just a two-part of why these coordinators are so valuable to us. As I said, first, they're doing it strictly based on, passion. And also they have the direct access to the children that we otherwise would not have, which allows us to give those children very specific care. So we say basic needs, which cover a lot of things, school supplies, food, clothes, and shoes. But really, it's up to the volunteer coordinator to decide what they think that child needs. So if they broke their glasses and they need, a new pair of eyeglasses, or they need hygiene items, because, their family, doesn't have that income to really, buy those things. It's completely up to them. They know the child the best. So it's just a really amazing partnership to be able to work with them based entirely on, a lot of trust and just, compassion for these children, and just, giving them just a better opportunities in life.
Yeah. And I think that's so great and important because, so many times we try to have, it's so black and white and such a box that, it alienates or doesn't relate to, all kids. And so putting that in the volunteers' hands is so good because they're the ones that, have the pulse on the kids, right? And really know what's going on a day-to-day basis. So I really, really love that. And talking about the kids that are receiving help, you mentioned it earlier that, it could be that, mom and dad are in between jobs, or, maybe they're working two jobs and it just isn't cutting it because they have, multiple kids. Some of the home circumstances that you're seeing here in the U.S., we talk a lot about the opioid crisis and really how that's impacting, CPS and foster care and child welfare and, all of that kind of stuff. Are you seeing that some of the areas you mentioned are some of the hardest hits from an opioid standpoint. Are you seeing any impact on that, or is that, kind of changed any of, where the kids are living or anything that you guys are seeing?
Really, we're seeing the most impact as far as our program is concerned is that we are seeing such an increase with the number of children that are living with caretakers other than their parents.
Yeah.
So a lot of the children in our program in those areas, especially in, as you're saying, in Appalachia, where it's a lot of the counties that are hard hit, some of the poorest counties in our country. Children, because parents are either unable to take care of them because of their issues with abuse. They've gone to jail, they've passed away. We have a lot, it's a huge issue where a lot of children are now being raised by grandparents who are elderly that never intended on raising kids a second time around, that do not have the means to do that. Aunts or, other kind of family members end up bringing up children, and like I said, in circumstances that was never planned. So it's really sad. We see a lot of it. We see really hardworking parents that really just can't make ends meet because every emergency just takes them 10 steps backwards. So a car breaks down or someone has to go to the hospital, and that means they can't pay the electrical bill that month. And so it's both sides. It's these really, really amazing parents that just want the best for their kids, and they're there and they're supportive and they're volunteering in the schools, but they still need extra help. And then we are also seeing a lot of, issues that go along with, people feeling so desperate. There's not jobs for people, and it's quite a huge issue, in our country, that people are driven to, substance abuse for so many reasons. And so we do what we can to try to alleviate some of that burden. And again, like you opened with, to give these kids some hope that what they've seen their families and parents go to, and they've seen terrible things at young ages, that, they don't have to consider that to be the way that their lives are going to end up as well.
Yeah. And it's funny, just by pure coincidence, I was traveling the last couple of days, and I was reading a People magazine, and I don't know if it's last week's or this week's, but I encourage everybody to Google it. And it was talking about this very thing, that there's such a large generation right now of baby boomers that have grown kids, in their 30s, 20s, whatever, that are now, because of the opioid crisis, having to raise grandchildren. And what a financial burden that has already done on a financially strapped baby boomer market, where they're retired and they, have kind of this fixed set income. And now they're having to, rebuy strollers and rebuy car seats and, all this kind of stuff, lunches for kids and, things that were never in their kind of forsaken, retirement budget. And how, they're going into debt for doing, the right thing. And there's no end in sight of, if their parent will, get treatment, or maybe they're in jail or whatever it may be. And it was a really just insightful when you kind of think of the trickle effect of what it's really caused as kind of needs and financial burdens on grandparents, or, as you said, an aunt and uncle, or whoever it may be. This highlighted grandparents, but it's pretty eye-opening when you kind of just put on that hat of what you'd have to kind of recreate, right?
It really is. And just, not only that, unexpected, financial issue that comes up with, all of a sudden have to take care of 3 or 4 kids, at the same time of your grandchildren, but they're not physically, able to keep up with the kids as well.
Yeah, they're not what they used to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, and we've seen, and they're, and the grandparents that, that I've been fortunate enough to get to meet, along with the children that are in our program. I mean, just like you said, just amazing people that are, taking on so much and so unexpectedly, but, they're tired. They're in their 60s and 70s and keeping up with young children and making sure that they're all, getting to school and, shopping for them and making sure that, meals are prepared. It's just a lot for them to do. And then you compound that with trying to figure out how you're going to be able to, afford to provide these kids with everything, that they need, that, just adds up so quickly. It's a huge issue in our country.
Yeah, I was reading in that article, one of the things that stood out, and I was thinking in relation to my son, is like, I feel like I tell my husband all the time, it's like, I feel like there's a class party like every week, right? And, every week it's like, who can bring this to school or that to school, and, all this kind of stuff. And one of the, grandmoms that was in the article was saying, we don't want our grandkid to feel alienated, that they're like the only kid that's not bringing in cookies, but literally that, we have to make a choice to, have, cut out, either all or part of our grocery money, just to plan on making cupcakes for a class party. And I was like, wow, that's pretty profound. When you really think about it, of, how many families are, having to make those decisions. So so the kid's not alienated, as they're the only kid that didn't contribute to, the Valentine's party or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And, on that point as well, maybe a child doesn't seem, different within a classroom based on the way that they dress and things like that, that might be noticeable as far as like, what kind of background they're coming from or whether or not their family is struggling. But just as you said, things like that come up on a regular basis. Field trips cost money, prom costs money. Doing anything that's, extracurricular is supposed to be money out of a family's pocket. And for that child to not participate is not only, disappointing for them, but it affects their self-esteem. And again, as I was explaining with Children Incorporated and with our volunteer coordinators, we are so fortunate to be able to step in and help kids with that. Absolutely have funding available for, field trip expenses. We absolutely are, participate in buying kids their graduation gowns, helping kids with any sort of expenses that are, related to those kind of special events that they really shouldn't be missing in school, right, because they can't afford it. So it's a lot to do. And we're so grateful that we have donors that allow us to, help kids in those like really, those times when, otherwise they might be left out.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you guys are doing a great job. I want to talk a little bit about your On the Road series. You've written, hundreds of blogs, visiting, countries and, projects that you guys have done kind of around the world. Tell me a little bit about, maybe describe to us like one of your, most memorable experiences and, kind of impacting kids and what you saw.
Yeah, our On the Road series is really special for a lot of reasons. We work in 23 countries around the world, and we work with nearly 300 projects, which are, the schools and community centers and orphanages that we partner with. So finding a way to be able to share those, those stories with our donors, to let them know, the impact that they're making, and to really just kind of, it's always been about like trying to paint a picture, of, hey, this is what it's really like for the children that we're supporting. This is what their community is like. This is what their family is like. And then, also to have the photos and the videos to go along with it. So it's been, I've been, so lucky to be, able to participate in that. And as you said, travel a lot to a lot of our sites. I've been able to go to Africa and India and a lot of countries in Central and South America, and as well as travel a lot in the United States to, highlight the work that we're doing, and just, try to motivate people to, stay involved or get other people involved in what we're doing. So there have been, so many stories to tell. I feel like, as we're talking about the United States in particular, the ones that really stand out to me as far as visiting that I've been able to do, and then write about in our On the Road series, is really getting to meet these children that we're supporting. And it's interesting. They do have a concept of that they are being supported by an individual. They sort of understand that it's, I don't think they really understand like sponsor, but, they understand that there's kind of someone out there in the world that's, a little bit magic. But I've had a few opportunities where I've been at a resource center of a school and meeting with a child, and it happened to be at the same time where they've received like a birthday gift or a back to school gift in the mail, from their sponsor, and getting to see a child's reaction to, having someone, send them things that are like very special, a stuffed animal that's their favorite color, or, an activity like a coloring book, or something that, they have, expressed interest in, whether through, the child's profile or a letter that they've written to their sponsor in the past. And just seeing that, again, it's so much about how we're really able to help them just, really feel better about themselves. These kids so often aren't encouraged at home to do well. They're not, they act like quite literally like never received Christmas gifts and birthday gifts. So it seems, seemingly like a small gesture from, people that have more means to put together like a package for a child, is something that they will like never, ever forget. And so I've gotten to experience that firsthand. And then I've also had the chance to hear like follow-up stories from children that graduated out of our program and are now, working, and they've become teachers themselves. And we've had some of our children in our program grow up and then come back to the school that they came in, and then now they're our volunteer coordinators. It's just amazing. And to have them say, explain just how much it meant to them to have, just someone to like encourage them on a regular basis, show them that they're cared for, was just, so motivating for them, and someone that stuck with them throughout their school, until they graduated from school. It's just, a really amazing experience to get to witness.
That's awesome. What's one thing that you're most excited for this year, whether it's traveling or what you guys are up to? Is there anything that gets you super excited for this year?
Oh, I love that question. Got some travel plans coming up, which are very exciting. We, since I've been doing the On the Road series for about 3 years now, I have not, this will be some new places that we're getting to visit and highlight. We'll be visiting Argentina and Chile and Uruguay, as well as Colombia and Peru. So we'll have a lot of really great stories coming up from our projects in South America, which is really awesome. And we kind of always have a lot of special funds with Children Incorporated that we like to be able to give a chance to, tell stories about the impacts that they're making. Cool. In particular, we've got a really fantastic mosquito net fund and an international feeding program fund. So, we're looking forward to being able to get a lot of feedback from our projects, stories, more pictures and videos to share with all of our supporters to see, again, what kind of impact that they're able to make on children. I just can't say enough about how a small amount of, support or a small amount of funds just goes such a long way in helping kids.
Well, that's awesome. I encourage everybody to, click on the link in the show notes and, really follow Shelley's journey and the On the Road series, or go to childrenincorporated.org. And there's a lot of opportunities to get involved, whether it's through donating, volunteering, whatever it may be, anything helps. So, Shelley, thanks so much for sharing your story and being on the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, great. If anybody has any comments or questions for Shelley, feel free to submit those. Remember to subscribe and get your weekly nonprofit. Thanks again, Shelley.
So much. So much. So much.